Star Wars Militia by Zach S., Mike, Osnerall, and Wiley S. Narrated by Joe Ardovino Jr. Thank you all so much for answering my random Reddit post and participating in my little experiment that turned out greater than I ever imagined it would. Thank you, George Lucas, for creating Star Wars and giving us fans from around the world something to bring us together. Zach. Star Wars is created by George Lucas and Lucasfilm. Star Wars and Lucasfilm are owned by Disney, created by Walt Disney. We, the writers, have not and will not profit from this writing piece now or in the future. This writing is purely fiction written by fans with no ties to Disney, Star Wars, or Lucasfilm. Chapter 1. 6 years ago. The apartment was dark and the door slid open. A shaggy figure shambles into the room, their arms searching for obstacles. They found purchase on the small refreshing station. Water splashed onto the figure, washing away large areas of dark liquid. They hiss when the water meets their tender skin below. After they cleaned and groomed themselves, they stared into their reflection. All hail the Empire. The figure then goes into their sleeping quarters, trying in vain to hide their limp. As their door hisses shut, another door closes as well. Today, about 5 ABY before the Galactic Concordance. Ursi opens her eyes to the yellow light of glow rods. She rolls in her military-issued shelter, searching for sleep again. "Come on, cadets, rise and shine!" The flimsy shelter collapses around her as the sergeant gave it a hefty kick. Crawling out of the wreckage, Ursi stretched her full 1.5 meters of height. "No time for grooming. We need to get back to base at 0600. A few other cadets had trouble stuffing their shelters in the early morning gloom. Ursi was no different, especially since she was one of the last awake. "Had a nice night?" Ursi recognized the voice and sighed. "Don't be like that, Ursi." A hand slipped around her arm. "Can't an old friend know how you're feeling?" "Friend? Don't make me laugh." With a shove, Ursi walked to where the others were forming up. The trek back was somewhat easier, having the lure of a bed and food driving them. As they passed the base's entrance, everyone was relieved and scattered. Though everyone would go directly to the barracks and cafeteria, Ursi strided towards the refresher, wanting to get the dirt out of her wonderful fur. She was guaranteed privacy in the public utility with the help of her wet boffin smell. After she changed into a fresh jumpsuit, hunger drove her to the base's half-decent chef droid. All the food was old rations, but the droid somehow finds a way to make protein bricks almost delectable. Almost is the right word, since Ursi still needs to bite it like a rancor to get off a sliver. As she was finishing, a fresh tray thunks next to her, being accompanied by a sly grin. A hand grabs her, halting her attempt at leaving. "Come on, why don't we reenact the good old days?" Ursi sneers at the individual, reluctantly sitting back down. "You do realize I haven't forgiven you, right? I can still feel the hair growing back." "Ursi, the guys put me up to it. How was I supposed to know boffin fur was flammable? I mean, the blaster was on the low setting and it still lit up like Tabanagas." Now the grin is gone, replaced by a lowered head. "Ursi, I thought we had something." "Don't even. Sarge instructed everyone to put their blasters on stun. You were the only one with your head running hot and no one put you up to it. Now, let me go." As she left, screeching came from the table. "You pompous, proud, lizard monkey-loving Wookiee! I was trying to say sorry, but no. Boffins have to rise above the rest." All Ursi wanted now was to have a quiet afternoon in the barracks. No such luck, since the sergeant came marching down an adjacent corridor. "Cadet Ursi Faye, I was looking for you. A message came down from command concerning you." "What's the message, sir?" Just for a second, Ursi saw the ever-present mask of neutrality fall from the sergeant's face, revealing that of a concerned friend. "Your father is being prosecuted for spying. He has been sending information to pockets of Imperial troops all over Coruscant." Ursi didn't even blink at the information, instead choosing to laugh. "My old man would have been locked up the instant the rebellion took Coruscant. His devotion to the Empire was probably even greater than Vader's." The sergeant's face showed surprise before reverting to its usual neutral look. Opinions about parents aside, he has asked to meet with you, as this may allow us to find the Imperials he was talking to. Command has authorized the meeting and greatly encourages you to take up the offer. Thanks, but no thanks, sir. As she tried to pass the man, her arm once again feels pressure. Command wants what your father knows and is ready to prosecute you as well for obstructing an investigation. The Bothan's fur ripples as she nods her head. You ship out tomorrow morning. Realizing his grip on the cadet, the sergeant returns Ursi's exaggerated salute. Before she's out of earshot, the sergeant gives her some more advice. For the meeting, try wearing something that doesn't show you as a part of the Republic. We need him to talk to his daughter, not a Republic cadet. Aye, aye, sir. Ursi fumed the rest of the way to the barracks. When she slammed down in her bunk, a holoprojector activated. For a few seconds, she stared at her family, lined up against a marked wall like suspects in a crime. It was them registering for Coruscanti citizenship several years ago. All non-humans were thoroughly searched, scanned, and registered by the Empire, even those few who worshipped the Emperor's rule as much as her parents did. It is the only thing close to a family photo that she has, and is the only thing that was worth enough to take as a personal possession. She carefully turns the projection off, not wanting to damage the only piece of non-military technology she owns. A minute later, sleep overtakes Ursi, pushing all thoughts of her traitorous parents from her head. 5 years ago. What were those staying rebels thinking? The Bothan's fur is standing on end as he paces the small room. Don't they realize the harm they are causing this great galaxy? Millions of credits gone to waste because of these hooligans. He pauses his stride, noticing his daughter in the hallway. Come here. The girl did what she was taught and followed her father's instructions. Have you done your lessons for today? Yes, father. Have you visited his statue and bowed? A slight wave of hair passes over her body. Yes, father. Fur only slightly muffled the hard slap as the daughter fell to the floor. How dare you not honor the one true ruler of the galaxy? Tomorrow, you shall not return until you have paid proper respect to he who gave us everything we have. The girl fumbled back to her feet, trying to keep her body a rigid board like she was taught. Yes, father. Go to your room. Go to the room the Emperor graciously gave you. He watched as his only daughter went into a room that was much too small for her. The alien settled into a cheap plastic chair, resting his head on a flimsy table. He who gave us everything. The father sighed, turning to see his wife enter the room. Our daughter didn't bow today. I thought I taught her better. The mother settled into another chair. So did I. The father leaned back, catching a glimpse of the small holoscreen on the wall. It was a live feed of the surface, 5,005 levels above their head. It was a gorgeous day, like always, with the cruisers and speeders flying around in a satisfying grid. Have you heard of Yavin? Those nerf herders are gallivanting around, ruining the Empire and the lives of everyone in it. Don't they realize that it is pointless to fight the natural government of space? They don't care about us. All they want is chaos and recognition. The Empire withstood their strongest blow, so what else can they do to harm it? The father leaned over and hugged his wife. I love you. And the Emperor. I love you, and the Emperor. Chapter 2. The next day. The sun was setting. Ursi slowly rose from her bunk, the shuttle's interior cold and hard on her delicate fur. She got her rest back at the barracks, but on her way to the meeting, she wanted more to pass time. Sleep eluded her. Too much to remember and struggle to forget. Too much to even consider inner peace. We're here, cadet. You'll be met by an escort and led to your father in the lower levels. The pilot's voice was calm, clear, and slow, but commanding. Ursi wished she could afford such a luxurious state of being. Slowly making her way off the ship, she was met by the beautiful sight of a fallen Coruscant. It looked far less grand than it had back then. Making their way through the different levels, careful to avoid prying eyes, Ursi and her escorts made their way to an area that the Republic had set up as a temporary detention center, as they were establishing their foothold on the planet. Imprisonment makes people lazy. As they progressed through the sector, only 2 pairs of eyes tracked the escort. One belonged to the security personnel, who monitored meetings and transfers. There should be 2 at all times, but Ursi's mind drifted, caring little for protocol. Even if she had, she would still be distracted by the second set of eyes. Her father, greeting her with a soft, affectionate look. Ursi Faye to see prisoner 1327. Her voice was now calm too, with her defeating her mind and keeping her appearances up. Right. We have you scheduled here. Please place your finger on this sensor. As the sensor beeped, so too did the father's plasma cell door. Giving her a nod to proceed, the guard informed her of the duration of her meeting, keeping his voice low to avoid alerting her father. Command is willing to give you time to retrieve the information, but don't take all day. Got that, cadet? Yes, sir. Leading her father to a private room, the 2 sat in opposing chairs. The metallic seats were certainly not built for comfort, but Ursi suspected she would not be here long. Hello, father. My dear Ursi, how have you been? Perplexed by this sudden show of care, Ursi pushed the subject. You're certainly happy to see me. After all those years of treating me like a dog, making me bow to your disgusting emperor, now you're all sunshine and rainbows? They say you're an Imperial spy. How could you? After how much we struggled thanks to that wretched empire, how can you continue to help them? You must be insane. Struggle. Yes, we certainly did. But Ursi, if it weren't for the few friends we made on Coruscant, we'd be dead by now, maybe even worse. I know I was harsh. I know I and your mother were too forceful, and I'm sorry. But we were only doing what you thought was right. I don't doubt that, father. But you have no right to keep helping them. The Republic will have you killed for it. Ursi did her best to seem genuine. She did love him after all, not that she would admit it. Ursi, I asked to see you for a reason. I'm surprised you came. When you left, I spent every day fearing the worst. Should have shown that thoughtfulness when I was still around. Look, I'm here. What do you want? To spend the day with your daughter before you die? I hadn't considered you the sentimental type. Placing his arms on the desk, Ursi's father extended his hand, reaching out to his daughter. Ursi, I'm sorry. I've spent every day since then regretting my treatment of you. Yes, I believed it to be for the best, but I was wrong. I did it to protect you, and instead, I hurt you. But I think I can make it up to you. What? You're gonna get me an ice cream? You have nothing I need. Ursi's temper was escalating, the months of hatred she kept bottled inside rising to the surface. They allowed me to live for a reason, Ursi. They want information, things that only I can provide. I want to share this with you. I may be done for, but you still have a chance. They might reward you, keep you safe. Ursi's father had not the faintest clue that she was actually part of the same Republic that had him stuck in this cell, awaiting certain death. Father, if you're doing this for my sake, you have already failed. What good would it be if I was to live my life knowing the father I'd just reconnected with is dead? You should tell them yourself. Who knows? They might retract the death sentence and give you something lighter. They're not like the Empire. They wouldn't wrongly charge you like that. Sighing and resting his head in his hands, Ursi's father conceded. In a low, defeated voice, he said, "You're right. I'll do my best to tell the whole truth. For your sake, if not mine." Ursi was excused as the nearby commander took over to listen to whatever her father had to say. As she rested in the shuttle, she found her thoughts drifting. The meeting had waged war on her mind. Despite her efforts to suppress them, memories of old rose to the surface. A few months earlier, the second Death Star had just been destroyed. Holo projectors in every bar, store, and home are focusing one live feed, the Death Star being destroyed. The announcement that Darth Vader and Emperor Palpatine had been killed. The rebels had succeeded in their quest and had successfully ended the cruel reign of the Empire. Ursi's parents were in disbelief. Their insides cried out in joy, but their exterior were displaying different tears. A display to match those nearby. Sadness, hatred, and depression. The Empire was crucial to these people's livelihoods. They wouldn't have a home without it. The same was true for Ursi and her parents. As happy as they may have been that the Empire was eliminated, They had to act cool as ever, to ensure they would not be cast out of their only home. Out of their usual cycle of shopping for what little food or supplies they could gather, the family halted at the sound of a nearby hollow. Their appearances were dropped in an instant. Now they were afraid, terrified even, and entirely defenseless. "We have official reports indicating that information which led to the destruction of our Death Star and murder of our beloved Emperor was handed to the rebels by Bothan's spies, those freaks of nature. I'd kill one of them if I saw them." These thoughts were not just from the hollow, but now also in every person at the market. Every set of eyes was now on Ursi and her parents. All eyes paired with brains thinking the same thing. Traitors. Surrounded in every direction, the family pleaded, "We have a daughter. It wasn't us. Please, have mercy." Mercy had not been found that day. An endless beating ensued, every one of them leaving punches, kicks, even hurling spit at the now broken family. Not just in spirit, but surely in bone too, as the hits had been so hard that they caused several cracks across each body. "Father, why?" is all she could get out before Ursi joined her parents in their unconscious slumber, any thoughts fading into darkness. Chapter 3. The next week. An unexpected meeting was called early in the morning and everyone had to participate. Everyone entered the hall of the abandoned casino they were using as a base, murmuring what it was about, and why everyone was forced out of bed at such an unusual hour, especially in an extremely freelance organization like the Coruscant Resistance. There were rumors in the air, like reinforcements from NR High Command or, even better, unconditional surrender from all Imperial forces. But inside her, Ursi knew what all of that was about. Silence fell in the room when Commander Jetster entered the room. Not because anyone feared him. On the contrary, the four-armed Basilisk was loved by basically everyone in the Resistance. Dex, that's how they called him despite his military grade, became one of the founders of the Resistance against the Imperial domain on the capital, after a commando of stormtrooper broke into his diner early in the morning looking for him because of his known sympathy for the Jedi. Dex managed to escape from the back and fled into the lower levels, where for the last 20 years he has been building something that can be called an army reuniting everyone that wanted to do something against the Empire, like Ursi. She vividly remembers that day, after her and her parents were almost beaten to death because of her species' involvement into the stealing the location of the second Death Star. She was taken unconsciously by Dex, who has always been like an uncle to her, a way for Ursi to escape from her parents' madness, and medicated her at her house. After she somewhat recovered, they sat at the kitchen's table and spoke, but this time Dex didn't tell her the stories of the mythical Jedi that Ursi loved so much, but he proposed something way bigger and dangerous. Take action against the iron fist of the Empire. And Ursi couldn't say no after what happened that day. She hadn't seen her parents since.
"All right, boys. Today is a day that could change the outcome of this war forever,"
Dex began. Excited voices started rising from the crowd.
"A prisoner,"
he said while looking at Ursi,
"gave us the location of various Imperial offices that should be abandoned. Free for us to take whatever information we can find that should be useful both for us, that for those guys at New Republic High Command. And maybe that will convince them to send more reinforcements."
"What about the prisoner?" Ursi interrupted. "How is he?" She didn't know why she did that. She doesn't care about her parents anymore. But she did, and now everyone's attention was on her.
"His fate doesn't depend on me, Ursi. But I can assure you that the ones taking decisions will take these informations into consideration. We are not the Empire after all,"
Dex answered, maybe the only person in the room out of the hundreds present that understood what was going on. Ursi felt a relief. But not only because she wasn't at the center of the attention anymore. Maybe her parents really did what they did only to protect her. But at what price? There were 22 objectives that her father provided to the Resistance, and they would have attacked them all at the same time with groups of a dozen soldiers each. In this way, in the inconvenience of an eventual leak of information, the risk of a spy was always there. The Empire couldn't dispose enough stormtroopers to protect even half of the objectives. Ursi had the most important one, an apartment at 500 Republica, the most luxurious neighborhood in the whole galaxy, that used to belong to a certain Admiral Penton, who died a year prior shortly after the Battle of Endor in a firefight against rebel forces.
"This is your most important mission. Hell, the most important mission this whole group has ever had,"
Dex told her after having asked to talk to her in his office.
"Since you joined us, you have been one of our best shooters. You deserve a big role in this operation."
And he wasn't lying. From the first day they gave her a blaster, Ursi had been lethal in a way no one could explain for someone with little to no experience. And shortly, this went from beginner's luck to true respect from the others, even by those few soldiers the New Republic had sent them. "Thanks, Dex. I won't disappoint you," she said, exiting the room.
"No, don't disappoint your father,"
replied Dex while the door was closing. Half an hour later, the team was ready in the briefing room. The mission command was assigned to Sergeant Morrow, a Twi'lek liberated years prior from Imperial slavery, and her desire for revenge was fueled into her becoming one of the most cruel members among the Resistance. Luckily, she wasn't like that outside the battlefield. Ursi couldn't imagine what they did to her during her time as a slave. The rest was formed by 6 New Republic soldiers, a luxury that only Ursi's team could afford since they had a very limited number of them, and the fact that Dex had approved into having at least one of them in every squad. But the vital importance of their objective persuaded the old commander into being generous with the numbers. There was also Vade, one of Ursi's childhood friends that had joined the Resistance shortly after her, and that was a true magician in slicing any type of computer and droid. And 4 other soldiers she only recognized by face, but she didn't know the name of. "Very well, team. The objective is extremely important. We'll need to secretly infiltrate this skyscraper," Morrow said, pointing to a hollow of the neighborhood, "and get up to level 7567. I repeat, without alerting major Imperial forces. I know that all of you guys want to kill some imps, but Dex doesn't want any trouble, so we must follow his orders. Anyway, the building is almost completely empty since a lot of those rich guys ran away after Endor or died over the forest moon, so we shouldn't encounter much resistance, except a few patrols at the entrance." "Understood." Everyone nodded. "Very well. This is a map of the apartment," she went on after a hollow of a beautiful apartment lit up the briefing room, with even a fountain on the balcony and a private landing pad. "Why don't we enter from there?" A man with a long beard Ursi recognized as one of Dex's best friends. "If you want to get shot down by an ion cannon, sure, Drill, go on and take a speeder. But then don't say I didn't warn you," Morrow replied among everyone's laughter. "I was saying, before stupid interruptions, that this is the apartment, and here there is the computer we'll need to extract the information from. Bringing an astromech with us would be too difficult and noisy. That's why Vade is here. You will infiltrate the room with Ursi and download everything you find, while we secure the rest of the apartment, and if everything goes right, we should finish in 45 minutes. Understood?" "Yes, sir." And everyone went to gear up. 30 seconds and go, Morrow said. They were under the entrance of their building. Like the other 21 teams, that in the matter of an hour would plunder the ISB command of Coruscant of vital information about the Empire. "Go, go!" It was 1800, and everyone was starting their attack. "Patrol on the left, 12 bucketheads, kill them fast," said one of the rebel soldiers before starting to shoot with his A280 blaster. The Imperials didn't see them coming, and in the span of 40 seconds everything was done. No casualties for them, and no one should have heard them. "Good job. Now, to the elevators. Let's split up in 3 groups of 4. If there is any problem, communicate immediately," said Morrow, and they obeyed, with Ursi, Vade, and 2 of the rebels going together. "You shoot well, girl. You could have been useful during the war," one of them said. "Thanks. Watch out!" Suddenly, the elevator came to a stop and the door opened, with 3 stormtroopers entering, DC-15 blasters held up, but Ursi killed them all in the blink of an eye. "How? How the hell did you know that?" asked Vade, and the problem was that Ursi didn't know. She has always had amazing reflexes, but this was different. She felt something like an instinct inside her that told her there was trouble incoming. She settled with not talking about it. "They know we are here. There could be stormtroopers waiting for us." "Got it, Ursi. We have 500 levels left.
We are going to clear the road for you guys.
Ursi believed she heard some euphoria in those words. When they reached level 7567, there was carnage on the floor. Luckily composed for the major part by bodies in white Imperial armor. But she could see 3 of their men dead on the floor, including the man with the beard that talked at the briefing. How did they know that? She immediately asked. Could the patrol at the entrance communicate with others? Impossible, Vade answered immediately. I jammed their comms as soon as we saw them. They couldn't communicate with each other, let alone with other floors. Maybe they spotted us with some secret security system I didn't notice. Morrow's face went as dark as the night outside. Well, you should have. But it's useless to debate at this point, and I doubt we have a leak. In that case, we would have an entire garrison of stormtroopers storming this building since we have the most important objective. But there isn't anyone coming. Nevertheless, me and 4 others will stay here to cover the escape while the others clear the apartment. You 2 go into that office. The Admiral's office was beautiful, full of pieces of art from all over the galaxy. Ursi could recognize an Alderaanian painting. Oh, poor Alderaan. And a statue from Felucia, and she was stunned by its beauty. Calm down with those eyes. Remember how those things got here, said Vade, bringing her back to reality. I'm starting to download the data, but it's going to take a few minutes. Why don't you look around for some useful things? And Ursi did so, opening drawers looking for data pads or anything that could be of any use, until in one of them she found something that she thought she would never see. It was a metal cylinder, with stunning gold details and black rubber stripes, and it fit perfectly in her hand. She recognized it immediately from Dex's stories. A lightsaber! She clicked the ignition button on the side, and a blade with the length of 1.5 meters came out from one of the extremities, luckily the one facing away from Ursi, and lit up the dark room with a purple light. And now what the hell is that? Don't tell me it's what I think it is, Vade said. Ursi could see the shock in his eyes lit up by the purple blade. A lightsaber, she said, admiring the blade. I thought the Empire destroyed them all after the Jedi were killed. Well, for me, you can keep it. I will end up cutting my hand if I use it, and I never cared for Dex's stories. There are no magic wizards helping us right now. Perfect, the download is over. Found anything more useful other than that thing? A few data pads with some bank accounts on Cato Nemoidia. That could be useful, but the rest is nothing of our interest. Perfect, so let's get out of here. They came back to the first floor exactly 50 minutes after the start of the mission, and they were the last to come back to the casino, which was more than 25 clicks away from the base. But Ursi could notice that more than half the team sent to the shipyard to steal some ISD plans was missing, and the faces of the survivor told her that the worst had happened. Dex, can I talk to you for a second? It was late evening, but Dex, despite the age, was still up in his office, analyzing some of the data from the mission, looking for a spy that could have told the Empire about their doings.
Sure, Ursi, come in. The sergeant talked well of you.
I'm grateful for that, Dex, but that's not why I'm here. Dex's eyebrows raised, and he put one of his 4 hands on his mustache. In the apartment, I found something interesting that I would like to show you. And she put a hand in her bag, taking out the lightsaber.
Damn, Ursi. And where did this come from?
I already told you I found it in the apartment.
Yes, I understood. I just meant... Damn it, Ursi, this is incredible. I thought that all the lightsabers were burned in that fire outside the Imperial Palace more than 20 years ago. Our good Admiral must have been a very influential person if he managed to get his hands on one of these things.
Do you have any idea who this lightsaber belongs to?
Well, Ursi, I surely knew some Jedi, but outside of my old buddy Obi-Wan and his 2 friends, I didn't have many contacts. And keep in mind that there were thousands of Jedi during the Clone Wars. One thing is sure. This Jedi wasn't in the temple. He was probably on some battlefield when he was killed. Otherwise, this weapon would have been destroyed along with the others.
Yes, but this is different from the lightsabers in your stories. You always said they'd have either green or blue blades, but this one is purple, Ursi said, activating it, still in disbelief of her discovery.
Purple, you say? This is weird. There was a great Jedi I saw in the hollow with a purple blade. But beside that, I don't know anything more.
Thanks a lot, Dex. But what should I do with it now that I have it?
Why don't you train yourself in using it? Between us, there are some experts in fighting with melee weapons. They could teach you some tricks, and you are a fast learner.
Train to use it? Are you crazy? She answered in disbelief. The Empire will send half of its forces after they see a lightsaber.
Ursi, the Empire is different. They are desperate and have few men. I doubt that they even remember about the Jedi since Palpatine basically erased them from history. Trust me, Ursi. You will do well. And I gotta say that the color fits you.
Thanks, Dex. I'll sleep on it. Good night.
Good night to you.
And she went to her bed, thinking of how cool and dangerous training with a lightsaber could be. Chapter 4.
Hey, Ursi. You did good today, and I'm sure this hasn't been easy on you.
Dex says right before she is out of the room.
Why don't you sleep tonight in the private quarters? You've earned it.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate it. She says as she turns around to give Dex a smile, as she really could use the sleep. Even considering the mission, she seems a little extra tired than usual.
Stop calling me sir. I'll be waking you up in the morning as I know you won't hear the morning alarm.
Yes, those soundproof walls are a godsend. Thank you, Dex. While asleep in her bed, Ursi tosses and turns, letting out a few muffled words and moans. It appears she's having some kind of nightmare. The door to the private quarters opens and a shadowy figure takes a few steps in. Without any thought or hesitation, Ursi grabs her blaster and shoots the figure dead in a split second from a deep sleep. She pauses for the briefest of moments as she could sense it, and killed it before she even realized what she was doing. She turns the lights on to find the figure was a shadow trooper. She opens her door and all of the noises come to her at once. Blaster fire, death, yelling, screams, explosions, and she could smell the walls burning. But she didn't hear any alarms. Why are there no alarms, she thinks to herself. Knowing she has to get to Dex and her father on the opposite side of the public sleeping quarters, she grabs the newfound saber and her blaster. Ready for a fight, she leaves the room and heads right towards the sleeping quarters. And as the door opens, she sees everything. Fellow militia members were fighting, but because all of the smoke, she could not see who they were fighting. Just as she stepped into the room, 3 figures all turned to aim fire at her, but she shot them down with no issues. She ignited the lightsaber to use it as a torch to see through the smoke, but couldn't use it as a weapon, because she didn't know how. Just as the saber lights up the room purple, she becomes the focus of almost everyone in the room. As all the shadow troopers focus their aim at her, she ducks behind a bunk, and all their shots miss her. As she pokes her head and arm above the bunk, she shoots 2 troopers with 2 fires of the blaster. She looks down at the bunk she just used for cover and sees Monty laying dead. Even though she was still mad at him for lighting her fur on fire last week, she did still have some feelings for him. He and her started with the New Republic at the same time, and were paired in training together immediately. With a very slight distraction by his death, a blaster bolt hits Ursi's blaster, rendering it useless. Now having no choice but to use the lightsaber, Ursi looks up and sees that the trooper who fired the shot had been killed by a fellow militia member, and so she makes her way towards the door, where her father and Dex wait on the other side. The door opens and there are 5 troopers with their backs to Ursi covering her path to her father, so she can barely see but can tell someone has a hold of him. Noticing it is Vade, she yells, "Vade! Is he okay? Vade!" The troopers, Vade, and her father all turn and the troopers take aim at their target. She awkwardly swings the saber at the troopers, not really knowing what she is doing, but the saber does all the work. With the troopers easily dismissed, she clearly sees Vade with her father. Her father yells out, "Look out, Ursi!" Just as he gets the word out, Vade shoots his automatic blaster rifle at Ursi. She manages to dodge a few bullets but never tries or thinks to deflect them. She no longer has a blaster of her own, so she has to get closer to fight back. While running at Vade through the smoke and flames engulfing the hallway, she doesn't see a bullet in time and it hits her in the arm, forcing her to drop her saber. "Vade, how could you? We treated you so well and gave you a family." Ursi knew she had failed and she probably didn't have much longer. Was it you? Did you tip off the Empire that we were coming? With a cold look and no emotion, remorse, or explanation, Vade exclaims, "For the Empire!" and takes aim at her. "Anything you want to say to your daughter?" Knowing this was his only chance to truly make things right, Ursi's father says, "Ask Dex about your mother," and immediately takes a thermal detonator from Vade's waist. "Dad, no!" screams Ursi, but it is too late. The detonator goes off and blows him and Vade into unrecognizable pieces. Ursi just sits in the hallway, on her knees, crying as the remaining militia and Dex come to find her. Still groggy from the wound, she hears a voice say, "All clear, sir," and passes out. Dex immediately knows what happened here, as he scoops her off the ground just as he did all those years ago on Coruscant.
"You poor girl," he exclaims.
The next day, Ursi wakes up in the medical hall with multiple other injured people. As she looks around, she finds a note that reads, "When you awake, come find me in my room. Dex." She rings her bell at bedside, and Sid, the base's assistant nurse, comes over and checks her bolt wound and her vitals, and says, "It's just a scratch. You'll be okay. You probably passed out due to trauma and pain because the bolt hit and burned a lot of nerves in that arm, but you're good to go." "Thanks, Sid." As she makes her way to Dex's office, she's getting a lot of looks from the survivors. They all witnessed her wielding a weapon that was thought to be extinct last night, and no one knew she had that in her possession, except Vade and Dex. She enters Dex's office, who is currently sitting at his desk, still in shock from the previous night's events, but notices her as she walks in.
"Ursi, how are you?"
he asks. "I'm okay, but we need to talk, and now. It's important."
"Sure, close the door."
"Before my father died, he told me to ask you about my mother."
"I was hoping this day wouldn't come. I'll just cut to it. Just let me talk and say what needs to be said, and then we'll discuss. It's going to be a lot to unpack. Way back when, before the Empire's reign, there was a day. This day is known as the Great Jedi Purge. To the few people who are still alive from that time, the Jedi were framed for treason and killed by the clones that worked alongside them. Well, part of this purge was also to kill all younglings, and even people who were suspected to be Jedi. Your mother was hidden by her parents as a child. A buddy of mine found her by herself near a trash bin a few days after the purge, and I took her in and raised her out of the public eye under my diner. Even though she was young, she was old enough to remember her parents. Your grandmother was a Jedi, as was your mother for a short period of time before I got her. It wasn't a great childhood. I couldn't give her the training she needed, so she lost touch with the Force. But don't get me wrong, I did the best I could to keep her safe. And all this means it's very likely you are a Jedi as well."
What? To say it was a lot to unpack was an understatement. How? Why did no one tell me any of this?
"To keep you safe," says Dex. "If the Empire found out, you'd be much worse off than you are now. They probably would have killed your parents on the spot and abducted you. You'd be fighting for the other side if you survived the training and torture and everything else they and this war has brought upon this galaxy."
How do I find out if I truly am a Jedi? I don't have anything special about me. I'm in my 20s and I've never seen anything that would point me to being a Jedi. As she says this, it clicks. She never saw anything, but she felt it. She could feel things happen before they do, like last night. She had an unexplainable, incredible aim before any training. She never thought about any of it in this way before.
"Well, I used to know this Ugnaught. He was younger when I met him. Came into the diner with Obi-Wan one day. He used to be an assistant to a Jedi watchman. The Jedi watchman he worked with, as well as all watchmen, would find possible Jedi, and this Ugnaught and the other assistants would conduct the actual test. The assistants would keep the test with them in case the Jedi watchman would get into danger and have to separate or if they were killed. The test would not be with them and still be okay, usable and hidden, and it would also keep the prospective Jedi safe. The blood test would then test for midichlorian counts. He was captured during the purge and they kept him as a slave for many, many years. I saw him a few years back when he came to say goodbye and collect a few things he stashed under the diner. He was released because he worked hard for them, and did good work for them even though he despised them. He only worked so hard he could survive and keep hope he would be released, so he could live a simpler life he dreamt of, even as a young assistant. When the purge started, the Jedi Watchman he worked with was killed, but managed to get away and hide the unused test he stashed at the diner.
Where did he go?
Arvala 7.
What's his name?
Kuil.
Chapter 5. A bleep sounded from the console in the quarter. Finally! Ursi moved to see the result of her search. It seems the Empire tracked the Ugnaught to a small town on the far side of the planet. She turns to view the rest of the room. Dex nods, rising on his huge legs.
Ursi, if you want someone to come with you, I can always claim to be sick.
Patting his side, Ursi glides by the hulking figure. Thanks, but people need you here. The Bothan vanished before Dex could disagree. Sand billowed into the shuttle. Ursi is already brushing the grains from her fur as she exits the rectangular ship. Believe it or not, having your father be a turncoat and sacrifice himself warrants a free U-wing. Condolences aside, Ursi still needed proof of Dex's claim. No one appeared to notice the alien walking into their town. Blank faces stood in the place of greetings. Only slightly worried, Ursi entered what appeared to be a bar. Her steps echoed in the packed but quiet building.
You lost, girlie.
Ursi turns to the counter and its ugly proprietor. No, I just need to find someone.
That means you're lost and a liar.
Ursi fought to keep her hair from rising. The bartender glared at the Bothan as he prepared another occupant's drink. Fine. Truthfully, I am trying to find an Ugnaught called Kuil. I heard he was around here.
The only pint-sized alien I've seen is the hermit who comes in every so often for food supplies. Never did catch his name.
Hope flared in Ursi's heart. Which direction does he come from? Before the drink mixer could respond, a familiar hum was heard outside. Ursi turned to see several people on speeders. Just as she realized they were raiders, an E-web slid into view. Stang. That single word slipped Ursi's lips as she dove for cover. The heavy repeating blaster unloaded on a pair of bystanders, cutting them down inches from the door. Pots and bones were heard breaking as the sand pirates laid claim to any loose items. When a silhouette appeared in the door next to Ursi, it was quickly set alight with red. The bartender nodded towards Ursi as he took another shot with his E11. Suddenly shouts were heard outside. Everyone started to rise as the hum of repulsors died in the distance.
Now,
the bartender says as he replaces his blaster below the counter.
The way to that Ugnaught is right around the same way as those heathens are retreating.
Thanks. Ursi stretched out a kink in her back and left the dirty establishment. Following the pirates' trail was easy, with another one of the Republic's condolences. She was still following their dust clouds as night fell. Just as the dark sky was starting to blur in Ursi's vision, a small light was seen on the horizon. It deviated from the raiders' path, but Ursi wanted somewhere warm to rest. A slight tilt of her foot sent the bike towards the distant glow. When a house became visible, Ursi's will gave out. Before unconsciousness claimed her, she deactivated the bike and let it drift within meters of the building. Everything else disappeared in a fog. Daylight blinded the waking Bothan. She lifted her head, rubbing the imprint of the speeder's controls in her face. A clinging sent her gaze in the direction of the fenced area by the house. A small figure was feeding womp rats to a delighted-looking blurg. Ursi stiffly started a walk to the feeder. You couldn't have woken me up? The man showed no sign of hearing her, turning to move back to the house. Ursi followed quickly behind the Ugnaught. What are you, a Jawa? Respond to me! He continued through the threshold with not a flinch. Exasperated, Ursi followed suit. The room was a decent size, even fitting the taller Bothan comfortably. I heard you used to find Jedi. No response. Well, I think I am a Jedi. Ursi's fur is rising at the lack of the alien's response. Dexter Jetster sent me to find you and your testing kit. The Ugnight's gaze finally fell onto Ursi.
I thought I was done with this dung.
He shuffled over to a section of wall and tapped. A pneumatic hiss was heard as a part of the surface popped out. He removed from the compartment a small box with a cylinder on the front.
Arm.
Kuil pricked Ursi's outstretched limb with the detached cylinder. Replacing the part to its holder, low beeping started to emit from the kit. What does it say? The older alien looked at Ursi, disgusted.
It takes about 30 seconds to get a result.
Ursi felt every second. Preparing for the worst outcome, a final, definitive beep sounded from the tiny box. A look of indifference was on the man's face as he read the screens.
Not the worst I've seen.
The Bothan stretched out for the box, wanting to see the result for herself. Before her fingers could touch the box, a blaster whined. What was the testing kit and Ursi's proof is now a circle of black soot. Stunned, Ursi stared at the obviously crazed Ugnaught.
I'm done with this business. Tell Dex not to send anyone else.
Not knowing what else to do, Ursi started to leave.
Bothan.
Ursi turned to the small figure.
12,550 midichlorians. That is higher than many of the people I've tested, though not the highest. You have potential for being a decent Jedi.
Wow. Thank you. Ursi was overjoyed. The barrier she set up before not made for good news. Any tips on how to use this power? How about training exercises? Do the robes just come with the job? Ursi halted her question as Kuil lifted his hand.
I have spoken.
Catching the hint, Ursi walked back to her bike. As she started back to her ship, she thought the world seemed different. Even in this desolate desert, she could imagine all the creatures and plants which survive in the cracks, all connected to her through a single entity. The trip back felt like it was in hyperdrive, nothing tainting the Bothan's joy. As she stored the bike, a console beeped. Ursi gladly opened the new message from Dex, wanting to respond with the extraordinary news. Her high immediately took a dive as she progressed through the message. She hurried to the controls for a quick takeoff. Dex has just informed her that the Imperial remnants had just attacked a New Republic outpost. Several of her friends were taken as prisoners of war. As she raced to find her friends, she couldn't help but smile. The Empire had trouble with a single Jedi in the rebellion's ranks. She was eager to find out what two can cause. Chapter 6. The light causing Ursi's smile was soon extinguished, replaced by darkness. As more detailed reports came in, a clear picture was beginning to paint itself. While this batch of Imperials were nothing more than a shadow of their former unit, they were commanded by someone to be reckoned with. Exactly who led them was a mystery, but the Republic knew they were out there in the dark somewhere, growing in power, waiting. While this attack was by just a small group of them, the bigger picture posed a significant threat to the stability of the Republic. They wouldn't have done something so bold without some form of reassurance. Ursi composed herself as she approached the surface of the planet, a few clicks out from this rumored base Dex had told her about. As she gently made a landing in the forest area around her, she pinged Dex. "What are we dealing with here?"
Well, Ursi, I won't lie to you. Things don't look good. We've sent down 2 small squads. One is waiting near the facility and the other...
What is it?
We lost contact with them once they approached the eastern walls. Didn't sound Imperial, though. I don't know what happened.
Damn. Ping me the frequency the active squad is on. I'll coordinate my movements with them. As she slowly made her way out of the incredibly dense environment, a plan of action was decided. Ursi would make her way through the southeast while the others provided overwatch from the west. If things got hot, they'd catch the imps in a crossfire. Since Ursi had a close-range blaster, she'd use that as long as she could. If she ever got into a desperate situation, she could always use the lightsaber and rely on her magic senses? Grinning at her own idiocy, Ursi approached a small mound overlooking the eastern wall. Nothing here, not even a patrol on the roof. That was off. How did an entire squad go missing without a single guard on duty? Whatever. Weird stuff happened all the time, or at least, that's what her CO would say. As she mentally prepared herself to jump down below and try to find a way in, she heard something. No. Felt something. Something dark. Evil. Squad, this force is giving me the creeps. I'm gonna make my approach now. You copy?
Solid copy, Ursi. Everything looks clear. Just a couple at the main gate to the north. You should be able to find a grate at the south side. The others were trying to pry it open, but...
All right, I'll take a look. Landing with a roll, Ursi slowly and quietly made her way to the rear of the facility. There was some form of vent, and it was partially open. No sign of anyone Republic, though. Looked like... claw marks? No, too messy for that. A laser? After examining it for a few minutes, Ursi came to the conclusion that nobody from the squad could possibly have tried entering. There was just no sign of them. Looks clear here. No sign of anyone. I'll bust in and see where it leads.
Be careful, Ursi.
Will do. Well, that was easy. Not only had Ursi managed to silently pry open the gate, but it was a direct entry point to the pipes. How anyone could have failed to enter was beyond her. It was like taking candy from a hut. The heat wouldn't be good for her fur, or her nerves for that matter, so she'd have to be quick. Rapidly climbing up, she held in her need to gasp, and, with a few clanks, made her way to an exit point. You hear that?
Base is old, pre-Empire. Must be a rodent or something.
Yeah, I guess. With a silent sigh, Ursi took a moment to recover. The Overwatch had counted 20 men outside the facility and at the barracks. So far, Ursi had counted 10 inside, but there were still plenty of rooms to explore. Once the 2 troopers below her grate had left, Ursi made contact with her squad. I have a bad feeling about this. It's the most amount of imps I've seen in one post, and I haven't even spotted one of ours yet. Hell, it rivals Coruscant. Are we certain the prisoners are here?
Saw them with my own eyes, Ursi. They must be underground. This base is bigger than we anticipated.
Well, looks like our plan is shot. No way we can shoot through them all. I have an idea. It's crazy, but beats wading through these vents for sure.
Ursi, be
careful. Yes, I know. Don't worry. I have a trick or two up my sleeve. Ursi groaned. While the cuffs were as tight as she expected, the imps certainly packed a harder punch than anticipated. After taking a light beating, Ursi was thrown into a room, lit in a way that the interior was visible, but anything outside was a mere silhouette. Light footsteps approached, feminine ones. So, girl, you turned yourself in. Part of that group of rebels we got earlier, eh? I'll ask you nicely. Where are my friends? With a loud creak, the metal door slid open. Regularly, there would be a shield of some sort, but the base was far too old and decayed for that sort of operation. Slowly entering the room and approaching the Bothan, this feminine figure stepped out of the darkness. You may have asked nicely, but I'm not much of a talker. You see, girl, you and your friends were mistaken. What are you talking about? With a chuckle, the woman crouched down to Ursi's level, as she was still sat on the ground. You will know me as Stone, captain to the only legitimate sect of the army of the Galactic Empire. You know what that means, girl? It means I know how to run a sinking ship. Keep it afloat. Your squad didn't last long. They soon gave things up. I know why you're here. We have no prisoners. Not anymore, at least. What have you done to them? Tell me before I... Watch yourself, girl. You might say something you'll regret. We just began transporting them. You see, your intel was wrong. This is no base. It's a mine, precious to the Empire's development. The real base is a moon away, and your friends are headed there now. You're trapped here. Alone, no one will save you, and well, since our last ship has already left, it seems you're destined to stay. Chapter 7. Unidentified ship, state your business, said a bored voice. This is transport SR-7567. I have some business to do on the moons. Proceed, repeated the voice, probably anxious to finish his job and go home. Well, that was easier than I thought, R2. If everyone on Coruscant has the same will to live as this guy, we might conquer it alone, said Luke with a faint smile, only to receive a few beeps in response. He had various reasons to come to the Coruscant system. He had to scout for the New Republic. The war had ended years before on Jakku, and Coruscant was still under ISB control. This was starting to hurt the public perception of the new galactic government, and Imperial sympathizers were starting to rise again, showing everyone how weak the New Republic was. So High Command decided that it was time for a military action, despite Mon Mothma's strong opposition. And they had chosen Luke to scout the situation and see how organized the local resistance movement was. But that wasn't the only reason he was there. Coruscant was where the Jedi lived for thousands of years, and Chancellor Mothma herself told him that the temple was still up, even though she doubted how much of the inside Palpatine had kept. He wasn't directly going to the planet. Instead, he opted to first check the waters on the 4 moons and see if he could contact someone important. He checked the database on the ship's navicomputer and opted that he would start from Centrax 3. While the other moons served as holiday residences for the rich Coruscant middle class, the rich obviously had houses all over the galaxy, on places such as Naboo or Chandrila. Centrax 3 was the less developed one, with large regions still full of vegetation, and town areas where crime was everywhere. Perfect place for an illegal movement to have some kind of base. He was flying in low orbit over the planet, searching for a town to land, when he sensed something. Someone was in danger, and the Force was calling on him. He stretched his senses more, trying to understand the source of this call, and he found it. A small building inside one of the full of junk forests of the moon. Luke didn't know why the Force had called on him, but one thing he knew for certain. If the Force wanted him to find something, he would find it. Ursi woke up trying to remember what had happened. The imp, Captain Stone, had tried to gather information from her about the Resistance, but she had refused, so they tortured her. A lot. After a few minutes, she finally managed to get up and walk a bit, but every muscle in her body was in pain. But she couldn't think of pain right now. The captured Resistance soldiers, her friends, were in danger. A trap brilliantly set up by Stone. She had to find a way out, but she couldn't find a way out of her cell. Until she heard screams in the hallway. And then the door to the cell sprung open, with a man in civilian clothes behind them. How could someone with that kind of equipment even manage to get inside the facility? Never mind going so many levels down. Then she recognized him. You are Skywalker. The man the Empire chased for years. Your face was all over Coruscant. Can't say people love you down there. Well, at least I'm famous. Come with me. He looked in a hurry. How did you manage to get in? I mean, they say you destroyed the Death Star, that's impressive, but you don't even have a blaster. You should be dead by now. He completely ignored her question and instead said, Are you from the Resistance? Yes, she answered. Have you come to finally help us? I'm trying to. NR High Command needs information about your doings on the planet and they sent me. But now we need to get out of here before they find us. Wait, I need my weapon first, she interrupted. I left it in an air duct level above this one. And in the meantime, she started walking towards the stairs. You can take a DC-15 from one of the guys I knocked out if you want. We don't really have time. But she ignored him. What kind of weapon is this important to you? Oh. His mouth open and his eyes fixed on her lightsaber. And then he looked at her straight in the eyes. Are you a Jedi? He said. Well, not really. Someone said I have the potential to become one since I have those powers, but I've never received any training besides a few days with this, and I have no one to train me. I can, he immediately said. What? This time it was her time to have her mouth open. And then the realization came. Yes, the Force called on me. Initially, I thought it was only because you were in danger and you needed a rescue. But now I understand. It was the will of the Force for me to find you. I want to refound the Jedi Order, but for that I need students and knowledge. I came to Coruscant for the latest. But I guess I also found the first one. Ursi couldn't believe what she was hearing, and it was like her childhood dreams becoming true in this exact moment. But then she suddenly realized that people were in danger. I would love to join you, but right now you need to help me. Dozens of our soldiers were captured, and they are bringing them to a base on Centrax 1. Probably to extrapolate every info they can on us. They won't say anything, but the imps will kill them if we don't hurry. Also, we need to shut up this facility. Skywalker immediately started running up the stairs. We cannot do as much about this place if your friends are in immediate danger, but we can go after them and then send a squad here when we finally capture the planet. Sounds good. I guess you have a ship, Mr. Skywalker? Count on it. Then he tapped on his comm link. R2, prep the engines, we're coming. Then turned towards her. Anyway, call me Luke. What's your name? Ursi. A few minutes after they took off, Ursi managed to call Dex through Luke's R2 unit, R2-D2, and they agreed to meet in low orbit over Centrax 1, and then launch a coordinated attack on the base. After that, he will meet Luke, and together they will lay the foundations for the New Republic liberation of Coruscant. After 2 hours of waiting, both parties were at the rendezvous point. Luke and Ursi with their small freighter, Dex and the Resistance with 12 ships of different sizes and purposes, but they needed every resource they could afford. R2-D2 was able to get the ship's signature before it left the smaller base. Ursi had never seen such levels of independence by a droid before, but the scanning took several precious minutes, and she couldn't stop thinking that they were wasting time while people were in danger. Finally, the little blue droid bipped, signaling that it had found them. A pretty big factory outside of Centrax 1's biggest city, known especially for its weapons manufacturing facilities. Another reason to take it away from the ISB. The less weapons they could produce, the less time an eventual siege of the planet will take. They landed the ships in an abandoned compound a few hundred meters outside of the factory, and started preparing the mission. And Luke insisted on bringing his droid with them, something that felt even more weird to Ursi. After entering from a small back door, R2 jacked into a computer and projected a holo image of the structure from the projector on his upper dome. There were 20 levels. The upper ones looked more like offices, while the lower they got, the more they looked like assembly lines. That looked like the place where they could have taken the prisoners. Dex took command of the situation, maybe to show Luke that the Resistance wasn't just a band of disorganized warriors, and made a few groups. Half of them, including Dex himself, would go on the upper levels as a diversion and to maybe snatch a hostage or two, while Luke, Ursi, R2, and 15 other soldiers would go on the lower levels to try and liberate the slaves. Interestingly, Luke asked for him and Ursi to be alone, and Dex agreed.
You're gonna be in safe hands with her, boy,
he had said. When they finally reached the lower levels, blaster fire had already erupted before them, and a few squads of stormtroopers had already passed them, definitely going to reinforce their friends, leaving this level with half the guards they would usually have. Luke peeked from the angle of a wall and said, I see your friends, surrounded by 15 stormtroopers. A few engineers on the computers on the far walls, but those guys usually aren't a problem. They're civilians, not soldiers. Fine, the less people we hurt, the better, she replied, and started unfolding her blaster when Luke stopped her. Nope, no blasters today, Ursi. Are you joking? You have told me you had some training with the lightsaber. Then let's use it. It is the weapon of a true Jedi. But there are 15 of them. I can't run towards them. They'll just shoot me down in an instant. Ursi was starting to feel like joining Luke was a mad idea. But you won't go near them. You'll stay away and block their shots. Feel them through the Force. Now he was starting to sound really mad. But something inside Ursi told her to trust him. They came out of their hiding side by side, green and purple light lighting up their surroundings. The stormtroopers immediately started shooting and Luke blasted forward, taking 2 of the white soldiers with him. Evidently, the don't go near them rule had value only for her. Ursi tried to do what Luke told her, so she tried to relax and feel her surroundings. And, for the first time, the little buzz she always felt was stronger. And then she felt it. Left arm, waist level, and blocked it. Then again, right leg, just over the knee. Again, sent into the ceiling. Fortunately, these guys looked inexperienced, probably teenagers taken out of the academy earlier because the Empire needed every muscle. After blocking another shot, the blaster fire came to a halt, and she noticed that every stormtrooper was either dead or KO, with the captured resistance members taking 2 engineers as prisoners, after they found them hiding between their computer stations. They met Dex and the rest of the crew at the ships. The mission was a total success, with only 2 casualties for the resistance and huge damage for the ISB. But there wasn't time for celebration, because an event way bigger was on the horizon, and both Luke and Dex knew it.
"So you folks at High Command have finally decided to help us, huh?"
The old Basilisk said, clearly joking with Luke. "Yeah, initially I had to stay here for a few weeks and see how badly organized you guys were, but you are great soldiers and way bigger than I expected. I think the attack cannot wait at this point," he replied, with a buzz of excitement rising around them.
"That's what I was waiting for,"
Dex said, throwing his forearms in the air.
"And I also have a surprise for you, Commander Skywalker."
Luke looked at him, puzzled.
"When the Separatists attacked Coruscant almost 30 years ago, they didn't come from the usual hyperlanes," he started explaining. "Instead, they used lanes known only to a few that went through the galactic core, coming out exactly on the other side of the defenses of the planet. And guess what? In one of our latest raids in 500 Republica, we managed to snatch charts of those hyperlanes. Tell me, Commander, are you impressed?"
Luke was left speechless. This was the biggest fleet Admiral Akbar had seen after Jakku. Maybe even bigger than what they brought there. All 10 Starhawks from General Syndulla's fleet, 5 MC-80 Starcruisers including his own, dozens of Nebulon B medical brigades, and even more CR-90 corvettes, with countless starfighters. They came out of hyperspace on the other side of the planet, just like Luke suggested. And he said the usual phrase, just like a ritual. "All squadron leaders report in. This is Red Leader, standing by. This is Gold Leader, standing by. Blue Leader, standing by. Rogue Leader, standing by. Alphabet Leader, standing by. Phoenix Leader, standing by. Hound Leader, standing by. Green Leader, standing by." The battle for Coruscant had started. The last Imperial remnant in the core worlds will cease to exist. Chapter 8. Just as everyone is finished checking in, Luke says, "Well then, let's go." And everyone starts battling. Flying at breakneck speeds, maneuvering different directions, barely missing, hitting both friendlies and enemies by hairs of distance, as well as some scattered asteroids and flying debris. Explosions happening all around, but all Ursi can focus on is Luke's flying. He's amazing. He has destroyed about 10 enemy ships and narrowly avoided numerous collisions, and it doesn't even look like he is breaking a sweat. "How are you doing this, sir?" "Luke. Call me Luke. It comes with time. And training. Mostly the Force guides me. You'll be able to do this someday. Maybe not as good as me, but you'll be okay." How, wonders Ursi. She's never flown this type of ship before, and doesn't even know how to shoot the guns. "Okay, Ursi, you're up," Luke yells as he lets his hand off the flying controls. "There are backup controls in front of you. Up is down, left is right. Throttle is the left button and the gun is the right button." "But Luke, I don't know how to fly." "Well, then I guess you should learn. And now is the time, because we are headed right at that giant asteroid right there. Focus and use the Force." Ursi closes her eyes and focuses on blocking out all the noises and distractions around her. She lifts the wheel and narrowly misses the giant asteroid. "I did it! I'm doing it!" she says as she realizes she is still flying. "Okay, good, Ursi. Now in front of us in the distance is an even bigger asteroid. Shoot a hole into one and fly right through it. We are going to go down into Coruscant and land and help the ground units take back control of the planet." Ursi does as directed and shoots a hole into the asteroid as she flies through it unscathed. An unfamiliar voice comes through Luke's comm. "Good job, kid. You may even be better than him. Not that that's that hard." "Thanks, Chewie. At least you've got my back. What are you guys doing here anyways?"
"Well, the old lady said you needed some help. So, as usual, I'm here to save the day."
"Hey, that's my sister, and we are both younger than you. I'm going to tell her you called her old when we get back from Coruscant." "Who are those people?" asked Ursi. "My family. Now it is going to get a little hot in here, but that's fine. When we get into the planet and you can start to see the buildings, press the yellow button down under the wheel on the left side. One of the reasons everyone thinks I'm a great pilot It's because I've never crashed on a landing. Truth is, I have an autopilot that lands it for me. I could do it with the Force, and some do, but why waste the time and effort? You can't tell anyone about that. That's a secret. Your secret is safe with me, says Ursi as she continues into the planet's atmosphere. The buildings become visible and she presses the yellow button, and she can feel the ship take control of itself, and it lands. As it is landing, she can see some destruction, including some flames and quite a bit of smoke. Some of the NR and Militia had already started in their fight against the imps. Well, I guess that makes it easy as to where we're going, says Luke. You got your lightsaber ready? You're going to need it. We aren't leaving here until we take back Coruscant and save the rest of your friends. I'm ready, says Ursi with a straight-faced look. In the short amount of time she has spent with Luke, she trusts him and can feel her confidence rising. Luke and Ursi make their way towards the smoke, cutting down every imp that gets in the way. Ursi doesn't realize it, but she is blocking blaster shots and fighting like a true Jedi. She and Luke are working in such synchronization that it's becoming effortless. She may not realize it, but Luke does. He is impressed, but doesn't want to say anything to mess with her focus. They continue making their way towards the smoke, and to get to it, they have to go through the Jedi Temple. It was still under imp control, but there wasn't as much resistance as Luke and Ursi had expected. They figured this was where the main battle would be, but the smoke was further. They easily get through the temple and continue to get closer to the smoke. And as they get closer, Ursi recognizes that they're near Dex's diner.
Yeah, it's a shame what happened to that diner,
Dex's voice says over Ursi's comm.
I just wish it had never gone to the imps.
How'd it happen? Asks Ursi.
After I left to be the leader of the militia, no one was around to keep it running. Soon as the imps started taking Coruscant's surface, it was just a matter of time. They repurposed it as a base, a meeting place for the higher-ups. But as they grew, they just abandoned it.
Why is this so important to you, Ursi? Asks Luke. It's where Dex took me in after my family and I were beaten nearly to death by extremists. I owe him my life. Well, you have far surpassed what I've done for you. I just gave you a chance. Look around you. You've turned that chance into a real hero. You are a hero. You may not realize what you've done, but we wouldn't be in this position without you.
He's right, Ursi. You've become a very important part of the Resistance. But we can't stop here. The smoke looks like it's coming from the lower levels.
Home. That's where they are. It's a message for me, exclaims Ursi. Luke and Ursi make their way to the lower levels, slashing every imp in their way, helping the Resistance that had already begun the battle before they arrived. They get all the way down to level 5005, when they see Stone with all the hostages. Took you long enough, Ursi. I knew you couldn't beat me alone. You needed a friend. Good thing I have all the collateral, says Stone. Let them go. With me, Luke, and the organization of the Resistance, we have all but won back Coruscant. It's over. If you surrender, you can stop the killing of your allies. Stupid child, interrupts Stone. These lives mean nothing to me. The lives of your friends mean nothing to me. Nothing matters to me except victory. And if I can't win a battle, I will take down whomever I can with me. You, your friends, your buddy here. I've got the whole place ready to blow. You say it's over, and you're right. But not just for me, but all of us, Stone says. Ursi, she's lying, yells a hostage and friend of Ursi's. Am I? Captain Stone says as she turns and shoots the hostage dead. See? Nothing. No! Ursi screams. Luke, what are we supposed to do? We have to save the rest of these hostages. On my signal, you'll know what to do. Huh? Trust me. Hey, Stone, catch! Luke yells as he force throws burning debris into Stone's face. Ursi gets the hint and runs to her friends and cuts a few of them loose while slashing down a few imps. Nice try, you fools, Stone says as she presses the detonator button. Ursi freezes and just closes her eyes, fearing what comes next. Nothing happens. Stone looks confused at the button as she presses it over and over. Still nothing. Luke uses this distraction to slash Stone's hand off, as well as cut down the remaining imps.
What did you do? Why didn't my bombs go off? Asks Stone.
While Ursi was pleading with you, I had R2 secretly go and disarm them. It was the perfect distraction that I didn't ever ask for. She's a natural, isn't she? Luke says, pointing his saber at Stone, waiting for her to make a move or surrender.
Luke, we need her alive. Bring her in,
a voice says over Luke's comm.
You act like I was gonna kill her, Leia. It's not you I was worried about. While you were fighting, I started talking to Dex. This is Ursi's home, the same place she was beaten, the same place Dex found her. I did some digging and it turns out Stone was behind the Imperial forces that took over Coruscant from the start. She was also the one controlling her parents. We need to find out who is behind Stone.
Looks like you're coming with me, Stone, Luke says as he calls over a Resistance member to put her in cuffs.
Never! Long live the Empire!
Stone says as she throws an electric shock mechanism into her mouth. Luke and Ursi just watch, as they know there is nothing they could do. There must have been some kind of protocol in place, because as this happens, all of the remaining Imperial forces on Coruscant follow suit. The Resistance has now taken back Coruscant.
We did it, Luke! We did it! Dex! Dex, we did it! Dex?
I'm sorry, Ursi. He didn't make it. He sacrificed himself to save Phoenix leader Jun Sato. Jun just told me over my comm, Luke says. Ursi bursts into tears and drops to her knees.
We won, but at what cost?
Unfortunately, Ursi, it was a cost we needed to take, but it was also a cost he was willing to pay. That is what makes him a hero. He knew it could happen. We all knew it could have happened to any of us. We are all heroes today. The survivors, but even more importantly, the one who gave the ultimate sacrifice. But because of that sacrifice, the people of Coruscant, your home, and his, are free. And now you have a chance to be a part of something great, says Luke. This perks Ursi up a little.
What would that be?
Asks Ursi. Finding you proves to myself something I suspected for a while. I'm not the only Jedi left, or at least the potential to be a Jedi. You can be. I'm sure there are more like you out there all over the galaxy. Raw, unrealized potential in need of training and direction. I can be that direction. That push that someone like you needs. Would you like to be the first student in my Jedi Academy and rebuild the Jedi Order? I'm not sure where it'll be yet or how many students we will have, but I will try my hardest to bring back the Jedi Order. The galaxy needs it now more than ever. So what do you—
Yes,
Ursi interrupts.
I'll go. Dex and many others gave their lives for me to get this chance. That's great, Ursi. I'm glad Luke has convinced you to join him. He'll be a great teacher. Besides, he'll need the practice,
Leia says over both of their comms.
What was that, Leia? Are you—
That's right, kid. I'm gonna be a daddy, Han Solo interjects.
Yes, and if all goes as planned, he will be here just in time to see a free galaxy. Thanks to you two and everyone else today, this will make it much harder for the Empire not to sign the Galactic Concordance,
Leia says. He? A son? Asks Han. Little Han Jr. sounds great.
No, it doesn't.
LJ for Luke Jr. sounds much better, says Luke. Everyone shares a laugh, improving the mood. What do you think, Ursi? Asks Han.
I think I need to start training and stay out of this.
Probably a good choice. Let's go. Luke responds as they walk back to Luke's ship and take off. The end.